Okay, now we have come to the point where we're talking about the quotient rule for derivatives. So what do you do when you have one function divided by another? So let's take a look at this. It says if h of x equals f of x divided by g of x, and of course we need to be sure that g of x does not equal 0. Okay, that's very important. The denominator could never be 0. All right, then h prime of x equals g of x times f prime of x minus f of x times g prime of x over g of x squared. Okay, it's quite a mouthful. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce kind of like a mnemonic. Well, maybe it's not a mnemonic, but maybe just a little catchy phrase or tune. If you've ever seen a movie about a girl and these 7 dwarfs, I'm not going to mention the name because it's probably copyright. Well, it is copyrighted. So you figure it out. This girl, 7 dwarves, she lives with them. Anyways, I think this next part will ring a bell. So what I'm going to tell you is, let's say f of x and g of x are these two functions, f of x divided by g of x. That's what h of x is. So I'm going to call this one on the top high, because it's on top, and the one on the bottom low. High and low. So let's see here. If I want to know h prime of x, all right, h prime of x, then I'm going to say that the rule is low, which is the function on the bottom, d high, which is the derivative of the top. So low d high minus high, which is the function on the top, times d low, which is the function derivative of the bottom, all right, over low low, which is the function on the bottom squared or multiplied by itself. So low d high minus high d low over low low. One more time, say it with me now. Low d high minus high d low over low low. All right, sounds like a tune from that movie, if you will, but I'm going to tell you that I always say this when I'm doing a product rule example, because a quotient rule example, not product rule, quotient rule example, because it just helps me remember the rule. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example. Let's see here. All right, so here's our example. We're going to call it number 7, and I'm going to call this high and this low. And what we're going to do is we're going to think about these in isolation, similar to the product rule, but we're going to call them high and low. So high, I'm going to call x squared minus 3x plus 2. Low, I'm going to call x to the 7th minus 2. D high, I'm going to call the derivative of the top, which is going to be derivative of x squared is 2x minus 3. The derivative of 2 is 0, of course. And then d low, the derivative of the bottom. So the derivative x to the 7th of x to the 7th is 7x to the 6th power, and the derivative of 2 is 0. So now that I've got all of that in place, I'm going to group it the way that I said the little tune there, low d high. So low d high is this, and it is very specific to the order. In the product rule, it didn't matter, but in the quotient rule, the order does matter. So x to the 7th minus 2 times 2x minus 3. That's low d high minus high d low, which is going to be x squared minus 3x plus 2 multiplied by this right here, 7x plus 7x to the 6th over low low, which is what? X to the 7th minus 2 squared. Okay, so it looks kind of like that. So what we're going to do next is we're going to do some distribution, and in our distribution we're going to then combine like terms. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, so what we're going to do to find y prime is we're going to do the FOIL of this. All right. So let's see what we get. 2x to the 8th power. So that's that. Minus 3x to the 7th. Minus 4x plus 6. Okay. Now I'm going to have my minus, and I'm just going to distribute this in here. So I'm going to have minus and then 7x to the 8th. All right. Minus 21x to the 7th plus 14x to the 6th. Something like that. Okay. And then I'm going to distribute my negative sign. Of course, everything is being divided by x to the 7th minus 2 square. And the bottom, typically in these problems, we don't touch it. Okay? So don't worry about that. So what does this y prime continue to look like? 2x to the 8th minus 3x to the 7th minus 4x plus 6 minus, when we distribute, 7x to the 8th plus, when we distribute, 21x to the 7th minus 14x to the 6th, all divided by x to the 7th minus 2 quantity square. So now I'm going to combine my like terms. I see a 2x to the 8th minus 7x to the 8th. So that's going to give me a negative 5x to the 8th. All right, and then I've got my x to the 7th. So I've got a negative 3 here and a 21. Okay, so that right there is going to give me a positive 18. So plus 18x to the 7th. And then I've got nothing below that I can combine. So I'm just going to write them now in descending order. And so it's going to be actually a minus 14x to the 6th. And then a minus 4x. And then plus 6. All divided by x to the 7th minus 2 quantity squared. Okay, so this right here is our y prime, our first derivative using the quotient rule for this problem. So let's go ahead and take a look at another example. Okay, so here's another example, and we're going to continue to apply the quotient rule here. This one looks a little bit easier. Let's call this high and this one low. All right. And let's see. We've got high is x cubed, low x minus 1. All right. D high is going to be the derivative of the top, 3x squared. And D low is going to be the derivative of x minus 1, which is just 1. All right. That makes it super simple. Now we just follow the mnemonic, or the, not mnemonic, but this little saying here for the quotient rule. Low D high minus high D low over low low. All right, so keep that in mind there. All right, so low D high, x minus 1, so y prime, is x minus 1 times 3x squared, low D high, minus high D low, which is just going to be minus x cubed times 1. But do you really need to multiply it by 1? Not really. Okay, so now we just have some simple distribution there, but we cannot forget divided by low low, which is x minus 1 quantity square. So when we distribute like that, we're going to get 3x cubed minus 3x squared minus x cubed, all divided by x minus 1 quantity square. Okay, and when we combine our like terms, we're going to get 2x cubed minus 3x squared, all divided by x minus 1 quantity square. So this is our first derivative, our y prime. Okay, and nothing to it. We applied the quotient rule. Hopefully this video was helpful. And as always, like and subscribe.